Hey, well, factoring into today's video, going to have a look at the Japanese model today. It's JMA Friday, so we'll be looking at the month ahead from Japan to see whether there's any sign of any colder conditions coming up. This takes us to the start of February, can you believe? So we're going well on into the winter now, then towards the latter part of the winter, really, with this update taking us into the start of February. Not had a great deal of cold weather yet, so we'll be looking to see whether there's any signs of colder conditions from the Japanese model. We'll also have a look at the CFS from the United States and also Beijing Climate Center from China as well. So quite a big update today covering the coming month. At the end of the video, we'll have a look at the chance of some very stormy weather coming up again next week from the GFS and ECMWF models. They are indicating around the middle of next week, Wednesday, Thursday, there could be a big area of road pressure coming in, possibly producing some very stormy conditions. It's been very stormy start across the north of Scotland with winds in the early part of this morning up to 100 miles an hour across the very far north. The worst of that is going now, but it's going to be pretty stormy again in the very far north tonight. As I say, there is a chance of some significant winds coming up next week also. So a big update today. Before I get on with that, just want to say about the advertising though. There's links to articles on most of the pages at gasovbusiness.com, so have a browse through widgets. Anything you're interested in, just click through. There's green keyword ads on some pages. If you write us at green keywords, basically ads, if you click through, go to the advertising website, support gasovbusiness.com by doing that as well. And there's also weather related ads there in yellow boxes to have a look at those. If there's anything very interesting, just click through. Thanks very much for doing that. These things are really paying for website. Allow me to sit here and talk to you via gavsweathervids.com. So let's get on with the update. This is the first 500 millibar height anomaly chart from the Japanese model. This is for the week that we're currently in. These are broken down into week periods, so this one will be taking us from the 8th to the 15th of January. The blue curves extrapolating to low pressure, the orange and yellow curves extrapolating to high pressure. So what we see through this week is that we've got a deep trough of low pressure out to west and northwest of the country. There's a ridge down to the south and going into the central part of the Atlantic as well. A very strong jet stream coming through the Atlantic Ocean into the British Isles. You can't really make us out that well because the colours are so intense, but British Isles is just there. That's a very unsettled chart for the coming week. It'll be quite stormy at times with that. Deep trough of low pressure to the north with pieces of energy breaking off, possibly producing severe gales at times. So it's not a great chart to be starting off with. The flow is westerly, so it's not particularly cold. As we go through to the second week period, this one takes us from the 15th to the 22nd of January. What the JMA is seeing there is that it's staying generally quite unsettled. We've got these blue colours around the country, but the trough is sort of moving down into the country like that. So it's still unsettled. It's not as stormy as the first week. The ridge is slipping away to the south and to the west of the country. So we've not got that tight gradient between the ridge to the south and the trough to the north. We've not got a very strong jet stream here. It's just generally unsettled and probably turning cooler as well. We're probably seeing the jet stream going to the south of the country on this. So it may be bringing the air down from a northerly or northwesterly direction. I think that is signs of things turning cooler into the second half of the month. And then as we go through to the third and fourth weekly periods, it's the same idea really. We've still got the trough of low pressure in there across the country, and in fact it is going to the east as well. So if anything is probably turning cooler, the flow is like that, so we're on the cool side of the jet stream with this, and we could well be opening the door to northerly, northwesterly influences. Now it's not a classic cold pattern, it's not a severely cold pattern because it's not got a great deal of blocking on our side of the pole. It's all over this side, over towards the Pacific side of the North Pole. So it's not a tremendously cold pattern. It's not a classic locked in sort of freezing cold pattern. Nevertheless, I think it is probably signs that the second half of January will be turning cooler, and with the trough of low pressure there would be wintry potential. So I think the JMA is seeing signs of things cooling off and possibly turning a little bit more wintry as we go into the second half of January. Now, having a look at the CFSV2, this is the 500 millibar height anomaly for the week of the 9th to the 15th. So again, the week that we're currently in. Same idea, blue is extrapolating to low pressure. The red colours will be extrapolating to high pressure. So for the coming week, we find that we've got this ridge down to the southwest of the country and down to the south, very similar to where it is on the JMA. We've got this deep trough up to the north of the country, to the northwest, a strong jet stream coming through the country. So again, same idea as with JMA, very unsettled through this coming week, with low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, a strong westerly jet stream, and really wet and windy, possibly at times with that. Now as we go through to the next weekly period, this one takes us from the 16th to the 22nd, and it's the same idea for JMA. So there is consistency here between the CFSV2 and the JMA. We're sticking the trough in over the country. Then we've got these green and blue colours coming down across the British Isles. The ridge is going out into the central part of the Atlantic. So again, the flow is probably going something like that. So we're on the cool side of the jet by the time we get through into the second half of the month, under the trough of low pressure. There is wintry potential. It's not a classic locked-in cold pattern, but with the trough sinking down to the south and the east of the country, there is some potential for colder and possibly more wintry conditions. Notice this area of red up here over the very top of the pole. That could be signs of some high pressure setting up over there over the top of the pole. If that expands, that does turn it into a much colder pattern. It starts to push the cold air out of the North Pole into the mid latitudes, but that's only very small at that stage, so no real sign there that we're becoming locked in. But sometimes you have to read between the lines with these models, and if that area of red was to get bigger, that would really start to lock us in to a colder pattern. As we move through to the next week period, which takes us from the 23rd to the 29th, we're still in quite a cool to cold pattern here. The trough is going more into the central parts of Europe, actually. The ridge it is out in the central part of the Atlantic. The flow is more or less northerly with that, I would assume, maybe even a little bit northeasterly. So yeah, I think that's probably turning even colder as we go through to the final week to 10 days of January. There'll definitely be some wintry potential in with that one. Again, with position of the high pressure in the central part of the Atlantic, you could roll some milder air over the top of it, particularly affecting Scotland, perhaps with perhaps some coldest weather down across England and Wales. And then finally going through to the final week period, this takes us from the 30th of January into the start of February, the 5th of February. Quite a strange one, this, but generally we've got a trough of low pressure over Scandinavia, and it seems to extend out over the British Isles as well. Hard to say quite what the jet stream's doing. The ridge is well away from us now, going down into the central part of the Atlantic. So overall, I think that's pretty unsettled and probably pretty cold, with the jet stream maybe going something like that. It's quite a strange one, that one, but cold and unsettled. Again, with the risk of some wintry potential would be my guess for that scenario. How the temperatures stack up with this for the first week period, the 9th to the 15th. We're coming out warmer than average. We're in those red colours just up there. The British Isles always in the far right hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. So we're coming out warmer than average for the coming week. That's okay. It's about what you would expect with a strong westerly jet stream. Now for the next week, going through the 16th to 22nd, this is the transitional week where things start to cool down. We're going cooler than average. We're going into those green colours. The scale is down here. So we're not going desperately cold, not going into the blues, but we are going cooler than average, perhaps by about a degree above average. And as I say, there would be some wintry potential with that. The next week period, the 23rd to 29th, this is when we're probably putting down a direct northerly, so it turns colder through that week period. We're going under a degree, maybe to a degree and a half colder than average then. Most of Europe, you notice, is quite cold as well in those green colours. So again, most of Europe going around a degree to 2 degrees colder than average. And then as we go through into the final weekly period from the 30th to the 5th of February, we're still cooler than average, not as cold as the week before, but we're still in those green colours, although they are coming up, so maybe that's more of a moderation. That was a very strange pattern that the model was seeing for that weekly period at the very end of the month and into the start of the February. The Beijing Climate Center 10-day 500 millibare heights, this one going from the 11th to the 20th, sees that we've got the trough here in across the British Isles just there. The ridge is up to the north, building around parts of Greenland, and we've also got ridging down to the south. So again, it's a very good reflection of the CFS and the JMA. They're all in agreement that for this particular period where we are now going through the next week or so, we're bringing in a strong westerly jet stream. It is unsettled. It's probably, because it's a 10-day chart rather than a week-head chart, it probably turns cooler later on, but overall it's a westerly mild sort of pattern to be starting off with. As we go through to the next 10-day period, this takes from the 21st to the 30th, signs that the trough, again similar to the other models, is sinking southward, so it's setting up more to the south of the country. Signs that we've got the ridging there towards Greenland and in the central part of the Atlantic. So again, it's turning colder or cooler with this, going on to the cool side of the jet, entrenching some cooler air into that trough of low pressure. And yeah, there would be some wintry potential in with that for the final sort of 10 days of the month. Things are lessening then as we go into the start of February. This is the 31st to the 9th, and we've still got the orange colours out over Greenland, so still got some blocking in the northern part of the Atlantic, but overall the trough is easing off across the British Isles. So again, this is probably transitional. We're probably going from cool and unsettled to probably something a little bit more settled and maybe a bit milder as well. So as we go through to the start of February, it all becomes rather odd and rather hard to judge what's happening really as we go through to the start of February. The signal becomes much weaker, but certainly the final couple of weeks of January, there is a signal there from all of these models that things will be turning cooler, maybe even colder, with some wintry potential. Now, talking of potential, we've got the potential of another storm next week. This is the GFS for Wednesday, and it's this area of low pressure in the central part of the Atlantic that I've got to worry about. It looks like it's going to be starting off unsettled next week and deteriorate as we go through the week. So this is the horrendous chart for next Thursday, with that storm coming in centred across Scotland. As always, the strongest winds are to the southern side of that low pressure, really battering here on this particular chart, Northern Ireland and Northern England. But of course, the position of that low pressure will change with time. But certainly some parts of the country could get a real battering on that as we go through into the middle of next week. Thankfully, the ECMWF isn't quite as bad. This is the chart for Wednesday, that deep area of low pressure in the Atlantic. That does deepen, but it tends to run to the northwest of Scotland as we go through to Thursday. So it isn't as bad, and it goes off up towards Norway by the time you get through to next Friday. It is windy. It's unsettled. There'll be bouts of heavy rain coming through, but it isn't as horrendous as the GFS, which is a very, very nasty chart. So we've got to be keeping an eye on it. Obviously, I'll focus on this for the weekend forecast tomorrow, but the potential is there for another battering next week, and this one may be a little bit further southwards, covering more of the country than was the case with last night's storm. Longer term, well, the signal is there from all three longer range models for JMA, the Beijing Climate Center and the CFS V2. The signal is there that it's going to be turning cooler through the second half of January with some wintry potential. It's not a classic severely cold, locked-in cold pattern that these models are going for. Just cooler, more unsettled, possibly cold at times, with some wintry potential. We'll see how it goes as ever. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Hope you found the video interesting. Bye.